This chart tracks human history over the last 300,000 years. For most of that time, our progress was a flat line. We spent hundreds of millennia simply surviving. Then, at the very end of the timeline, the line suddenly turns vertical. Three variables drive this sudden rise. First, volatile weather forced us to adapt or die. Second, we began recording knowledge so each generation could build on the last. And third, we harnessed highly concentrated energy sources, moving from muscle power to the heart of the atom. But to understand this curve, we have to look at where we started. Roughly 300,000 years ago in Africa, we were a tiny, scattered population. We shared the map with at least 3 other human species, including Neanderthals and Denisovans. We were just one actor in a very crowded play. Our story nearly ended 74,000 years ago when a supervolcano in Sumatra erupted. It triggered a volcanic winter that cooled the entire planet. Some evidence suggests our population dropped to just a few thousand survivors. We had to become more resourceful just to stay alive. Enduring these environmental bottlenecks established a baseline of resilience. Every time the climate tried to wipe us out, it forced us to develop the skills that would eventually allow us to dominate the planet. The climate acted as a giant pump. During dry, icy periods, growing deserts squeezed human groups into coastal refuges. When the rains returned, the deserts turned green, allowing those populations to expand across the continent again. While we were stuck on the coasts, our diet shifted to shellfish. These are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which are essentially high-performance fuel for brain development. Living by the beach likely helped us grow the large brains we have today. In these early tribes, you couldn't store food, so you couldn't be richer than your neighbor. Everyone stayed equal. These groups only worked about 15 to 20 hours a week, leaving plenty of time for napping and telling stories. For most of our history, success didn't involve hoarding wealth. It meant maintaining a balance within a small tribe, where sharing was the only way to survive. Around 70,000 years ago, a small group left Africa for good. We reached Australia by 65,000 years ago, which means we were already building boats and navigating open water long before we had metal tools. As we spread, we encountered Neanderthals and interbred with them. If your ancestry is from outside Africa, your genome likely contains about 2% Neanderthal DNA. Eventually, we outcompeted them through larger social networks and better tools. By 20,000 years ago, the Ice Age peaked. Sea levels dropped 120 meters because so much water was frozen in glaciers. This created land bridges, like Doggerland, which allowed people to walk from modern-day France to England. To survive the Arctic cold, we invented the eyed needle about 30,000 years ago. This allowed us to sew tight, tailored clothing that trapped heat against the skin. It was essentially a survival suit that opened up the coldest parts of the planet. We also found bone flutes from 40,000 years ago. This shows that even in the harshest conditions, music and emotional bonding were a priority. We were jamming together long before we ever learned to farm. Our main advantage was never our physical strength. It was our ability to invent tools and maintain complex social bonds that allowed us to survive in any environment on Earth. About 11,700 years ago, the weather finally calmed down. We entered the Holocene, a period of warm, stable climate that allowed us to invent farming. But agriculture was a trap. Early farmers actually worked harder and had worse health than the hunters they replaced. Grain could be stored, which meant it could be stolen or taxed. This led to the first kings and rigid social pyramids. People moved into crowded, dirty cities that were often death traps for disease, surviving only because people from the countryside kept moving in. We invented writing to keep track of these food stores and taxes. By 600 BCE, states began stamping metal coins to standardize value. This made trade much faster and moved us toward a global market economy. In 1492, the Columbian Exchange connected the Americas with the rest of the world. While Old World diseases caused a tragic population collapse in the Americas, New World crops like the potato and corn fueled a population explosion across Europe and China. By the late Middle Ages, we developed the software for modern trade. Double-entry bookkeeping allowed merchants to track profits and losses with mathematical precision. This, combined with the printing press, allowed complex commercial ideas to spread and stick. Writing, money, and ledgers shifted human memory and trust out of our biological brains and into external systems. We could now manage massive, complex empires because the information was stored on paper rather than just in our heads. Roughly 275 years ago, we found a new power-up: fossil fuels. The steam engine gave us tireless mechanical muscles that could work anywhere. This broke the old limits of what human labor could achieve and sent our progress into a vertical climb. Our population surged from 1 billion in 1800 to 8 billion today. We transitioned to an urban species, living by the industrial clock rather than the rising sun. For the first time, most of us live in cities rather than the wilderness. In the mid-1800s, we discovered germ theory, and by 1928, we had antibiotics. By neutralizing the microscopic predators that had killed us for millennia, we effectively doubled the human life expectancy. We have entered the Anthropocene, the current era where human activity is the single largest force of nature. Today, the weight of humans and our livestock far exceeds the weight of all wild mammals left on Earth. By harnessing millions of years of stored solar energy, we expanded beyond our role as participants in a local ecosystem. We now function as the primary force shaping the planet's geology. In 1947, we invented the transistor. This development allowed us to move information processing from our brains to machines. We didn't just store memory in books anymore. We could now process it at speeds no human could match. This is the ultimate trend of our species: externalization. We moved digestion to the cooking fire, memory to the page, and now we are moving our thinking and analysis to silicon and the internet. But there is a catch. Our civilization was built on a stable climate, and the energy we use to run it is now destabilizing that very foundation. We are effectively sawing off the branch we are sitting on. The final challenge of our journey isn't about conquering nature. It is about whether we can cooperate enough to manage the immense power we now control before we crash the system entirely.